Well, tonight, Paul Blume has the story of one woman's 75-year quest to find out what happened to her brother.
It is a bitterly cold, windy day out here in Marshall, where one local family flies its POW MIA flag every year on Memorial Day. It is an annual tradition that will now have to be reevaluated after the discovery of the USS Grayback.
Well, I guess we don't need this flag anymore. He's not missing in action anymore.
For 75 years, Elaine Johnson waited, wondered, and agonized over the fate of her older brother, Earl Halverson.
I think I was 13 when he left, and we never saw him again. So I guess I've been waiting my whole life.
Elaine reports Earl, a mischievous, fun 17-year-old, left the family home in southwestern Minnesota to serve his country in the Navy during World War II. When his submarine, the USS Grayback, was reported missing in March of 1944, it absolutely devastated her mom and crushed the entire family.
Nobody will ever know how she suffered. And I suffered with her.
Elaine, now 90 years old, still keeps a copy of the telegram that delivered the grim news close by. There's also photos, historic newspapers, and letters her brother sent, including this one he penned from Navy training in Hawaii, concerned about the weather back home.
She told me about the storm around Marshall. The farmers must feel awful having their crops hailed up.
Elaine tells me she was so relieved to learn on Veterans Day, Monday, that Earl's final resting place had finally been found off the coast of Japan. The Lost 52 project that tracks missing U.S. subs, making the discovery in about 1,400 feet of water.
They found him. That's how I feel. They found him. Just they found him.
Up next for Elaine and her family, trying to connect with some of the 79 other families who lost loved ones on the Grayback. Turns out her mom kept a meticulous record of photographs and letters shared on the home front between the women of the submarine, the mothers and the wives, who frantically wrote to each other in the days after the vessel disappeared, desperate for news.
This could have ended up anywhere. It could have ended up in an antique store. It could have ended up in the garbage. But we found it and we made sure to save it and to commemorate it. And we want to make sure other people get to experience this with us.
Much more on that part of this amazing story coming up on Fox 9 News at 9 o'clock.
And as Paul Blume tells us, Elaine and her loved ones are now on a very special mission of their own.
She had a tenacious personality. She wasn't going to give up. You know, she wanted to know where her son was.
Amy Cunningham flips through a precious piece of family history, and in many ways, a small piece of American history.
And when you look through these, it's almost haunting because they're looking at you like, don't forget me, and we didn't. 75
years ago, Amy's great-grandmother, Amelia Halverson, began meticulously organizing this photo scrapbook in an effort to track the 80 missing sailors on board the USS Grayback.
And if you read the writing, it tells you the age, the weight, the hair color, the eye color, which is really interesting.
One of those missing was Amelia's son Earl of Marshall, whose surviving sister is now 90 years old, still living in their southwestern Minnesota hometown.
He said President Roosevelt asked for volunteers for the submarine. And he said, I thought it was my duty.
In March of 1944, at the height of World War II, the Grayback disappeared. In a different era, the ominous news was delivered by telegram. The family still has this copy. The women, meanwhile, on the home front, including Amelia and other mothers and wives across the country, kept vigil, writing to one another, sharing photographs, and praying for a miracle.
There's a woman who mentions that she's pregnant, and her husband is now missing in action, and she doesn't know what her future holds.
On Veterans Day, it was announced the Grayback had finally been found off the coast of Okinawa. The Lost 52 project that tracks missing U.S. subs, making the discovery in about 1,400 feet of water. According to reports, it's believed the vessel was sunk by a Japanese bomb.
They found him. That's how I feel. They found him.
With her great aunt's blessing, Amy, a metro area artist who painted this life-size portrait of Earl, is now on a mission that has gained momentum with this week's incredible news. She's committed to tracking down the names, the faces, and stories of those in her great-grandmother's book, all those young men who presumably died together, fighting for freedom.
It gives you chills. It makes you really understand the depth, and then also understand the importance of this, where this could have ended up anywhere. It could have ended up in an antique store. It could have ended up in the garbage. But we found it, and we made sure to save it and to commemorate it. And we want to make sure other people get to experience this with us.
And it was really eye-opening to see how the war and the Grayback mystery rippled across families and generations. For example, Earl's brother joined the military shortly after the sub disappeared, going off to battle himself in an effort to find Earl. Of course, that brother, Amy's late grandfather, now she's involved in this, her kids. It just goes on and on.
It's interesting to note there, I mean, a bygone era for sure, but the way that they kept track of things, kind of like an older version of today's social media in some ways, and to bring it all full circle was amazing.
It was really neat. It was a piece of history for me just to see. And you're right, I kind of thought I was watching like the precursor of social media and Facebook and that book that the great-grandmother had designed with the photos and the names and the stats. And then, as you mentioned, a bygone era of communication. You know, in those letters, there were some that had received their horrible news by telegram, but others hadn't. So their letters that said, well, I haven't gotten the telegram, so maybe the military's wrong. Maybe my son is still alive out there. And now finally, 75 years later, all of the answers came with that submarine going down and finding the remains.